Jade, only 16, Liverpool was a city with a rich history and vibrant culture. But beneath its bustling streets, a darker reality was taking hold. For years, county lines drug trafficking had quietly spread across the city, weaving a complex web of crime and exploitation. These networks were controlled by gangs who used Liverpool as a central hub to move drugs to smaller towns and rural areas, often far from the public eye. What made this form of crime particularly sinister was its reliance on vulnerable people, often children and teenagers, who were coerced or forced into acting as drug couriers. Many of these young people came from broken homes or difficult circumstances, making them easy targets for exploitation. They were promised money, protection, or a sense of belonging, but instead were trapped in a cycle of fear and violence. For years this problem had remained hidden, overshadowed by more visible crimes like burglary or robbery. But for the families affected and the officers on the ground, the reality was clear. The county lines operation was devastating communities across Liverpool. Gangs were ruthless in their tactics, using intimidation and violence to control their territories and maintain their grip on the drug trade. Phone lines were used to coordinate the movement of drugs and people, with young couriers sent to deliver heroin, crack cocaine, and other substances. These couriers were often moved between locations hundreds of miles apart, sometimes living in dangerous conditions while under constant threat. The local police knew that stopping this required more than routine patrols and arrests. It demanded a deep understanding of the networks involved, strong cooperation between different departments, and careful protection for the vulnerable individuals caught in the middle. Community organizations and social services were also crucial, providing support for those affected and working to prevent young people from being drawn into the gangs in the first place. As the scale of the problem became clearer, pressure mounted on Merseyside Police to act decisively. The city could no longer afford to turn a blind eye. Operation Shield was born from this urgency, a coordinated effort to break the grip of county lines on Liverpool once and for all. The operation would prove to be one of the most challenging and important missions the force had ever undertaken, setting the stage for a week that would change the city forever. Behind the scenes, Merseyside Police began laying the groundwork for what would become Operation Shield, a large-scale crackdown designed to dismantle the county lines networks that had taken root in Liverpool. The planning was meticulous and took months, involving careful gathering of intelligence and coordination between multiple units within the police force. Detectives worked undercover, blending into communities, listening closely, and watching for any signs of suspicious activity. It was a painstaking process, because these gangs were secretive and highly organized, often adapting quickly to avoid detection. The officers had to stay one step ahead, piecing together clues from phone records, social media, and informants. The operation aimed to target not just the low-level couriers, but the leaders who orchestrated the drug trafficking. These individuals often stayed hidden behind layers of others, making it difficult to reach them. But through persistent work, the police began to map out the network, linking phone numbers to addresses, identifying patterns of movement, and discovering where drugs were stored and sold. It became clear that the gang's influence stretched beyond Liverpool, reaching into surrounding counties and towns. This made the crackdown even more complex, requiring collaboration with forces outside Merseyside. What made Operation Shield unique was its focus on the people caught in the middle, those vulnerable individuals used by the gangs. Social workers and support agencies were brought in to work alongside the police, creating a team dedicated to safeguarding these victims. This was not just about making arrests, but about saving lives. The vulnerable were often children or young adults who had been forced into this dangerous lifestyle. Some were victims of violence, others manipulated through fear or promises of protection. Police officers trained in child protection were assigned to handle these cases with care, ensuring that when the raids began, the young people would be found and offered help immediately. The level of secrecy surrounding the operation was intense. Only a select group within the police force knew the full scope of the plan to avoid leaks. officers prepared for a rapid series of raids across the city, all happening within the same week. The goal was to hit the gangs hard and fast, disrupting their operations before they had time to regroup. It was a risky move, but one the police believed was necessary to finally turn the tide against county lines trafficking in Liverpool. The stage was set for an unprecedented crackdown, one that would change the city forever. The gangs running the county lines operation were masters of disguise, hiding their activities in the most unexpected places. What made their methods so difficult to uncover was how they blended seamlessly into everyday life. Police quickly realized that the drugs and cash weren't just found in the usual suspect locations like abandoned buildings or street corners. Instead, they were hidden in plain sight inside local shops, family homes, even community centers. This camouflage made the traffickers nearly invisible to anyone not looking closely. One common tactic was using legitimate businesses as fronts. A small phone shop might seem harmless, but inside it could be a hub for coordinating drug deals. Couriers would make quick visits, passing messages and packages under the eyes of unsuspecting customers. Other times, gangs exploited family ties or community trust, using relatives' homes to stash drugs or meet customers. In one surprising case, a quiet neighborhood church was discovered to be a meeting point where dealers exchanged information and goods after hours, hiding drugs in storage rooms and behind pews. The couriers themselves were carefully controlled. They communicated through secret codes on phones, changing phone numbers frequently to avoid detection. Their routes shifted daily, making it almost impossible for police to predict where deliveries would happen next. Some couriers traveled long distances, often carrying drugs and cash between cities. They were under constant pressure, living in fear of both rival gangs and the police. The networks also used technology to stay ahead. Encrypted messaging apps and burner phones made tracking communications incredibly difficult. Police analysts played a crucial role in uncovering these hidden layers. By carefully examining phone records, bank transactions, and social media activity, they began to connect dots that at first seemed unrelated. Anonymous tips from the community helped fill in gaps, revealing new locations and suspects. The challenge was enormous because the gangs adapted quickly, closing down one operation only to open another nearby. Each breakthrough brought new surprises, showing just how deeply county lines trafficking had embedded itself into Liverpool's fabric. Despite the frustration and setbacks, the police remained determined. Every small discovery brought them closer to unraveling the entire network. They knew that finding the hidden places was key to cutting off the gang's supply and rescuing those caught in their grip. The hunt for these shadows had only just begun. When the day of the first raids arrived, the atmosphere was tense and electric. Police officers had spent months preparing for this moment, and now it was time to strike. In the early hours before dawn, squads moved silently across Liverpool, targeting dozens of locations simultaneously. This coordinated approach was crucial. It aimed to catch the traffickers off guard and prevent them from warning one another or destroying evidence. The scale of the operation was staggering, involving officers from different departments, including drug enforcement, child protection, and tactical units. As the raids unfolded, some of the expected targets were found: run-down flats, known trouble spots, and abandoned warehouses that had long been suspected as drug dens. But soon, officers uncovered far more surprising places connected to the trafficking. A local barber shop, a quiet church, and even a playground near a primary school had been used as fronts or meeting points. Finding drugs hidden among children's toys or secreted away behind church pews shocked many involved in the operation. It was a chilling reminder of how little respect these gangs had for the communities they terrorized. Inside some homes, vulnerable teenagers were found living in unsafe conditions, clearly controlled by the traffickers. Officers worked quickly to remove them from harm, knowing that rescuing these young people was as important as seizing the drugs. Evidence collected during the raids included large quantities of heroin and crack cocaine, as well as cash, weapons, and phones. The discovery of these items proved the scale of the operation and the financial power behind the gangs. The raids also uncovered methods the traffickers used to stay ahead of the law. Some had built secret compartments in walls or floors to hide drugs and money. Others had altered businesses with hidden rooms or false walls. This level of planning showed how sophisticated and dangerous these criminals had become. Despite the success of the initial raids, the police knew this was just the beginning. Each arrest had the potential to trigger a violent response, and the gangs would not give up easily. The officers remained on high alert, ready for whatever came next. The city held its breath as the operation moved forward, hoping this would mark a turning point in Liverpool's fight against county lines trafficking. One of the most unexpected twists in the operation came when an insider within the gang decided to cooperate with the police. This individual, tired of the violence and danger that came with the drug trade, made the risky choice to provide crucial information that officers had struggled to uncover on their own. The insider's knowledge offered a rare glimpse into the inner workings of the county lines network, from the leaders giving orders to the couriers carrying out dangerous deliveries. With this new source, the police were able to identify key players who had previously remained hidden and trace the flow of drugs and money with far greater accuracy. However, this betrayal did not go unnoticed. The gangs quickly became aware that someone within their ranks was feeding information to the police. The atmosphere grew tense, and violent reprisals followed. Rival groups scrambled to cover their tracks, destroying evidence and shifting operations to new locations. The insider's life was at risk, forcing the police to place them under constant protection. This added another layer of complexity to the operation, as safeguarding the informant became a priority alongside making arrests. The insider's cooperation also exposed the ruthless, and arrests were made. A critical part of the operation unfolded, rescuing the vulnerable individuals trapped within the county lines network. Over 150 people, many of them children and teenagers, were found during the crackdown. These young victims had been coerced, manipulated, or forced into working as drug couriers or lookouts. For some, the gangs had promised safety or a way out of difficult lives, but instead they became prisoners in a dangerous world they could barely escape. When officers discovered these individuals, their priorities shifted immediately from enforcement to care. Social workers, counselors, and specialist child protection teams were on hand to provide urgent support. Many of the young people were frightened, confused, and wary of the police at first, having been threatened by the gangs not to trust anyone. Some had experienced violence or neglect and were in desperate need of help beyond rescue. Safe housing, medical attention, and emotional support were vital. The police worked closely with community organizations to create long-term plans for their recovery, aiming to break the cycle of exploitation. The scale of the rescue effort was unlike anything seen before in Liverpool. It highlighted the true human cost behind the drug trafficking. The lives damaged or almost lost to addiction, abuse, and fear. Some victims had been moved between cities, isolated from their families and support networks, making their situation even more fragile. For many, returning home was not an option due to unsafe environments or ongoing threats. Specialized care centers had to step in, offering protection and a chance to rebuild. This rescue operation brought to light stories of courage and survival. Despite the trauma, some young people found strength to cooperate with the police, helping to identify gang members and reveal how the networks operated. Their bravery was essential in making the crackdown successful and preventing future harm. Though the arrest sent a powerful message to the traffickers, the rescue showed the wider community that this was not just a criminal issue, it was a humanitarian crisis. Saving lives was as important as stopping drugs, and this part of the operation gave hope that healing could begin for those who had suffered in silence for too long. While the arrests and rescues were a major focus of Operation Shield, the police knew that following the money was equally important to dismantle the county lines networks for good. The gangs made enormous profits from drug sales, and these profits were carefully hidden and moved through a variety of schemes to avoid detection. The police financial investigation teams began tracing bank accounts, monitoring transactions, and looking for signs of money laundering. This work revealed a complex web of cash flow that stretched far beyond Liverpool's borders. Investigators discovered that the gangs had invested in a range of businesses, some of which appeared legitimate on the surface. These included small shops, car dealerships, and property rentals. By funneling illegal earnings into these enterprises, traffickers were able to clean their money, making it difficult for law enforcement to link funds directly to criminal activity. In some cases, these businesses became hubs for further criminal operations, unwittingly or otherwise. This connection between the drug trade and local commerce shocked many in the community, revealing a hidden side to familiar places. The police also uncovered evidence of luxury purchases made by gang members, expensive cars, jewelry, and even properties in desirable neighborhoods. Seizing these assets was an important part of the crackdown, as it hit the traffickers where it hurt most, their wealth and status. Freezing bank accounts and confiscating assets not only disrupted their operations but also sent a clear message that crime would not pay. Financial detectives worked closely with national agencies to track money flowing through the country and even abroad. They found links between Liverpool's county lines, gangs, and criminal groups in other cities, suggesting a nationwide network working together to maximize profits. This broadened the scope of Operation Shield, turning it from a local crackdown into a larger effort against organized crime. By following the money, police were able to piece together a clearer picture of how county lines traffickers operated behind the scenes. The seizure of assets removed the financial power that allowed these gangs to continue exploiting vulnerable people and expanding their reach. It was a crucial step toward breaking the cycle of violence and control that had gripped Liverpool for too long. As the weeks of Operation Shield progressed, the police began to unravel the full extent of the county lines network operating through Liverpool. What had started as a focus on local drug dealers soon revealed connections that stretched across the country, linking Liverpool gangs to criminal organizations in cities hundreds of miles away. This discovery transformed the operation from a citywide crackdown into part of a broader national fight against organized crime. Through careful analysis of phone records, surveillance, and intelligence from informants, officers mapped a sprawling web of communication and coordination. Gangs used encrypted messaging apps and burner phones to avoid detection, constantly changing codes and routes to stay one step ahead. These technological tools allowed traffickers to quickly move drugs, money, and people across different regions, making the entire network extremely difficult to dismantle. The police knew that breaking just one part of this system wouldn't be enough. They needed to strike at the heart of the network. Collaboration became essential. Merseyside Police worked closely with forces in other areas, sharing information and coordinating simultaneous raids. National agencies, including the National Crime Agency, joined the effort to target leaders who had previously operated with relative impunity. This combined approach brought new resources and expertise, allowing for a more strategic and effective campaign. The operation demonstrated how organized crime could only be challenged by cooperation between multiple agencies and communities. As arrests increased, the gangs tried to adapt by shifting their operations and recruiting new couriers. But the police remained vigilant, using every piece of intelligence to stay ahead. This relentless pressure began to weaken the network, disrupting drug supply lines and limiting the gang's ability to function. Each successful arrest sent a ripple effect through the criminal organizations, causing confusion and fear. The scope of the operation revealed just how deeply county lines crime had embedded itself in everyday life across the UK. Yet, it also showed the power of law enforcement and communities working together to fight back. The unraveling of this network marked a major step forward in the battle against a crime that had long threatened the safety and well-being of countless people. Liverpool was no longer just a victim, it was leading the charge for change. As Operation Shield reached its peak, tensions soared. The pressure on the gangs intensified, and some members chose to risk rather than surrender. One night, a violent confrontation erupted on the streets of Liverpool that became the operation's most dramatic moment. Several high-ranking gang members attempted to flee the city, hoping to escape the net closing around them. What followed was a high-speed chase that wound through busy neighborhoods, narrow alleyways, and major roads. Police units deployed tactical vehicles, drones and aerial surveillance to track the suspects, coordinating efforts to prevent any chance of escape. The chase was dangerous, with reckless driving putting innocent bystanders at risk, and forcing officers to balance urgency with public safety. The suspects' desperation was clear. They knew that if caught, they would face serious charges and long prison sentences. For the police, this was the moment to finally bring some of the most dangerous criminals to justice. The pursuit ended when the suspects were cornered in an industrial area on the city's outskirts. Officers moved in quickly, using non-lethal tactics to apprehend them without further violence. Several were arrested on the spot, while others were caught after a short-foot pursuit. The arrests included individuals believed to be key organizers within the County Lines network, people who had long operated from behind the scenes. This last stand was a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in the operation. The traffickers were not just criminals, they were willing to risk lives and cause chaos to protect their empire. The police, meanwhile, demonstrated their commitment to protecting the community, even in the most dangerous situations. Following the chase, additional raids targeted locations where the fugitives had ties, leading to further arrests and seizures of drugs and weapons. The operation had struck a powerful blow, but officers knew the gangs would not disappear overnight. The violence and desperation seen during the chase underscored the ongoing challenge facing law enforcement. Still, the success of this final confrontation sent a message. Liverpool was no longer a safe haven for County Lines traffickers. The balance of power was shifting, and the city was determined to reclaim its streets from those who sought to control them through fear and violence. The aftermath of Operation Shield brought a mixture of relief, reflection, and resolve to Liverpool. Over 100 suspects had been arrested during the week-long crackdown, including many high-ranking members of the County Lines networks that had long terrorized the city and its surroundings. The police had seized large quantities of drugs, cash, and weapons, striking a significant blow to the gang's operations. But more importantly, the lives of over 150 vulnerable individuals were safeguarded. Young people who might otherwise have remained trapped in the dangerous world of trafficking. The success of the operation was celebrated by law enforcement and community leaders alike. It was seen as a major victory in the ongoing battle against County Lines drug trafficking, proving that coordinated, intelligence-led policing could make a real difference. The arrests and seizures sent a clear message to those involved in the trade. The city would no longer tolerate their presence. Families affected by addiction and violence saw a glimmer of hope that change was possible. Yet, despite the achievements, the operation also revealed the enormity of the problem. County Lines trafficking was deeply embedded in Liverpool's social and economic fabric, and it would take sustained effort to ensure the gains made during Operation Shield were not lost. Police and community groups emphasized that the fight was far from over. Prevention programs, education, and ongoing support for vulnerable people would be key to stopping new recruits from falling into the gang's trap.